Just when you think it might be time to relax after Big 12 Media Days wrapped up, the BYU basketball program jumped right back into the headlines as they add their 13th and final scholarship player in Khadim Mboup. Who is he? What does he offer to the BYU basketball program? We're delving into all that ahead on a Friday edition of the show.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you who we like to call everydayers right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Of course, this is your original daily podcast focused on all things BYU, and we are brought to you today by our friends over at FanDuel. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody every day, all summer long from FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. All right, let's dive right in on today's show. Let's talk about BYU basketball. As I mentioned, it felt like we might have a nice, easy end to the week here on the podcast. And then Kevin Young says, you know what? No. We're gonna jump in front of the line and take the headlines back over. Well, BYU has filled out his entire roster finally, with the 13th and final scholarship player being Khadim Mboup. And now, if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, I am going off what I saw on multiple videos where he had pronounced his own name. Now, he is a native of Senegal in Africa and is a guy who's been playing at the NBA Academy in Africa, along with 20 some odd other aspirational professional players. He's also played in the Basketball Africa League, which is a subsidiary of the NBA's developmental work worldwide to identify top talent and nurture it and obviously allow it to play high-level basketball. And the other thing about this is he is going to be the youngest player on BYU's basketball roster this year, as he was originally a member of the 2025 recruiting class, and he is now reclassifying to 2024 and will enroll in BYU in the coming days and get started with his teammates, workouts, and the like. I actually really think this is an intriguing pickup. Now, a couple of you in our Locked On Cougars Insider group, I would encourage all of you to sign up if you have not done so already. It's a really, really fun way to interact with the show. A couple of you reached out, and we'll get to the rest of the mailbag here in a minute, but I'm going to get this question out of the way right now. Jake, who is he? What is his background? What kind of offers did he have elsewhere? Well, the thing about it is he is a young man who grew up and believed in playing basketball. There was a really cool 10-minute video from the NBA talking about his background growing up in Senegal, why he is so in on basketball, and having his family talk about what he has done, what he means to them. He's got an older brother who apparently came over here stateside to play college basketball, so he is chasing his dream. The other part about this that I'm very, very intrigued by is the fact that he is still just 17 years old. He is reclassifying. He's going to be on BYU campus, and he'll turn 18 when school is underway for fall semester. I believe they said his birthday is in September. But if you look at his skill set, between 6'8" and 6'9", 210 to 220 pounds, he fits the mold of the mobile big man that Kevin Young apparently wants to have in this program. And Mboup is going to come to BYU, and I don't expect him to be an impact guy right away. He is actually, in my opinion, the classic 13th guy on the roster. And okay, what does that mean? He is a guy that if you watch his skill set, there are all kinds of tools, the ability to step outside and drain a three, the ability to take it to the rack, use their size, like I said, 6'8" or 6'9" and 220 pounds to bowl your way to the rim and score that way. It also shows versatility on defense and the like, but he is going to obviously need time to continue to develop for BYU. And this is a very, very savvy pickup because looking at his skill set, if his recruitment wasn't already going to take off, and according to On3 and Joe Tipton, who originally broke the news on this, he was considering SMU alongside BYU in terms of his top options. I look at the film that I saw of Mboup, and it screams to me a guy that you would have seen blow up in the coming months in the lead up to the signing day of 2025's recruiting class. So in some ways, BYU swiped a guy out from underneath the noses of everybody else in college basketball, and he gets to come into BYU, work with Kevin Young and the entire BYU staff. According to Robbie McCombs, Will Voigt, who's got worldwide connections, literally, he's been coaching all over the world, was the big reason why they knew about Mboup and were able to attract him to Provo. But I look at this pickup, and it's going to be one that I think could pay off a couple of years down the line if he comes along to the level that most people expect him to come along at. He's not going to come in like a Jaeger Denham or a Cannon Catchings, where you're already seeing them run with the ones. If you watch these practice clips that the BYU social media team has been putting out sporadically throughout the past couple of weeks, I look at this as a guy who you see all the tools, you see all the skills on his film. You've probably evaluated him in person multiple times. In the case of Will Voigt, I would imagine he's probably traveled over to Senegal to evaluate this young man, obviously playing in that NBA academy. And he's also got pro experience. I mentioned he played in the Basketball Africa League, BAL, and it's what it is it's a continental league that have players all over Africa playing against the other top pros on that continent. So I really think that Mboup is going to benefit by coming to BYU, working with NBA level coaching. Obviously, Kevin Young and his staff will offer that. And yeah, if he takes him maybe a year to really get adjusted and understand the nuances of playing high level college basketball, you don't need him to step in right away. There's a reason why you have 13 scholarships. I'm already expecting BYU's rotation in the early part of this season to be at least 10 deep. You know what? You can't play all 13 guys and play them enough minutes that are going to have everybody satisfied. There are guys who are going to have to take a hit in terms of their availability to play in games and have a minutes restriction, etc. And I think a guy like Mboup, I think he comes into BYU probably understanding, yes, playing time maybe at a premium this year, but as long as you go out and there and work and obviously prove your worth to this program, there's no reason to think that as in technical terms, a redshirt freshman a year from now, could he step into that lineup and become the stretch 4/ big size 3 wing player that BYU wants to have in this program? So I think this is a very, very savvy pickup by Kevin Young. It's not the big man, the true big man is probably what the term I like to use, a true 7-footer. But looking at some of the film, and if you saw yesterday, they did some combine testing for BYU basketball players, and Keba Keita, I think he pretty much out-jumped their vertical jump thing that they had there at the gym. They're going to have to obviously combat size with their speed and athleticism. Yes, Fousseyni Traore and Keba Keita play bigger than their listed heights of 6'6" and 6'8" respectively, but you're going to have to obviously kind of generate a new look on defense. But that's obviously going to be a big part of what BYU will be evaluating in the upcoming workouts that they have this summer. And then once the semester kicks off, BYU really starts in earnest preparing for the upcoming basketball season. That's when you really start to see things come together. And we'll see what this lineup ultimately looks like come November when they take the court as a team officially inside the Marriott Center. But I really think it's a nice, solid pickup for BYU to bring I'm going to butcher his name from here to Kingdom Come, it feels like, but Khadim Mboup. So I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly once again, but I look at this and I think it's a pickup that BYU is essentially betting on. Okay, we got him a year early. We give him a year of working inside our system. What can he look like in a year's time as he comes along with BYU basketball? And the hope is, fingers crossed, that it works out the way they envision it and he ends up being a professional prospect like many expect him to be, because you don't get invited to play in the NBA Academy in Africa for nothing. They are looking for the top tier talent on that continent to go to that academy, and Mboup got one of those pretty coveted spots to play there, and obviously brings that experience factor that he has to BYU. All right, coming up here in just a minute, some news is making the round with regards to conference realignment and the Big 12. Is Brett Yormark ready to stick a figurative stake once again in the heart of another conference that's one of his colleagues? Well, if you believe some of these reports, that very well may be the case, and we'll dig into that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Now, passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive, my friends. eBay Motors has everything to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts, your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for with eBay Guaranteed Fit. Your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, remember, not cash, with all the parts that you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive today to ebaymotors.com. That's eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And of course, eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for tuning in. If you've not done so already, I would encourage you guys to check out Locked On's first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. It's called Locked On Sports Today. It's available on YouTube and also now available on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. The best part is Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league as well. Find Locked On Sports Today available on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, or also available on YouTube. All right, let's talk about Big 12 realignment. Now, some news came out, and Ross Dellinger referred to it in some media sessions, I think with John Kurtz down at Big 12 Media Days, that the Big 12 is eyeing the ACC in terms of, I said a minute ago, putting a figurative stake in the heart of the ACC. Now, how would you go about that? Well, if you believe that both Florida State and Clemson, the two schools so far that have filed lawsuits to jailbreak themselves from the ACC's supposed ironclad media rights deal, if BYU and the Big 12 can get those two schools, most notably, I said Florida State and Clemson, they can get those two schools to join the Big 12 conference, essentially jump the shark and kind of just run around the SEC and the Big 10 and scoop those teams up. What an incredible coup, once again, that would be for Brett Yormark. Now, the reporting on this, I admit, is shaky at best. I talked yesterday that this time of year, there's a lot of speculation out there. But when Ross Dellinger, and trust me, Ross Dellinger knows more about college football and its machinations and everything that goes on behind the scenes in this sport than most people out there. But when he says that the Big 12 and Brett Yormark are eyeing the ACC, and obviously that goes right to the look of Florida State and Clemson, if he can essentially bypass the other two power brands in college athletics, snake around them, scoop up probably the two biggest and boldest brands in the ACC, maybe you scoop up along with them a Miami or Louisville, whoever it might be, that you want to add to the Big 12, that would be a major shot of make them just look like the Big 12 absolute geniuses. Remember, Brett Yormark was saying that we executed our plan. The Pac-12 did not when asked about how things went down, obviously. Now, nobody wanted to see the Pac-12 go away, but the simple fact of the matter is that the Big 12 had a plan. They got their media rights still in place, and the Pac-12 was left floundering for months, if not years at that point, with two ineffectual commissioners who essentially threw their hands up and said, I don't know what you guys want me to do. That's the complete opposite of what Brett Yormark is. Brett Yormark, for everything that he is, that you may think he is a man of action. And what he wants is he wants the Big 12 to be synonymous with the Big 10 and the SEC, and he wants it to be a Big 3. Well, the way to do that is to go out and pluck apart the ACC and grab the power brands before they bolt to the Big 10 or the SEC. Convince them that the Big 12 is where they want to be. Convince them that the Big 12 can offer them more than what those other conferences can offer them, and get them in the fold, and then really establish yourselves as a true power player on a national level. I think that is Brett Yormark's whole goal, is to make it so that the Big 12 is in the same breath with the Big 10 and with the SEC. Now, will the media rights deals necessitate that or give him that right away? No. But if in the interim, until those new media rights deals are renegotiated, if you can add power brands, and once again, the ACC, the power brands that they have, Florida State, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina to a level, Virginia, I think Louisville might be that fourth team I would opt for. So essentially, I would say you give me Florida State, you give me Clemson, you give me Miami, and then you give me Louisville, and we'll call it good. That pushes the Big 12 to 20 teams. You can create two 10-team divisions. Obviously, it keeps extra teams out in the Eastern time zone, so you may be able to delineate a little clearer, maybe a East and West format of 10 teams each for division's sake. I know you don't want to necessarily play with divisions, but you just for scheduling purposes and the like. I think that would be an absolute masterclass. It would show once again to the college football universe that Brett Yormark has got big cojones and he's not afraid to go out there and swing for the fences. He did it with the Pac-12. Remember, there are all these Pac-12 homers who were swearing up and down that the Pac-12 was going to pick apart the Big 12. It was not vice versa. The Big 12 was ripe for the picking. What does he do? Well, he allegedly offers Colorado a $2.5 million signing bonus. And when Colorado accepted that, that was definitely the beginning of the end. If the end was already kind of coming for the Pac-12, it felt like that point, but it's kind of like him pushing Colorado over the edge. He said, we gave a $2.5 million bonus to one school and got 4 in return. That's speaking of the Arizona schools and Utah to jump into the conference. Colorado got the financial benefit of being the first to enter the fray, but I don't think it's the last that Brett Yormark is going to try and do. Could he go out there and still create a basketball Leviathan by adding the likes of Gonzaga down the line? Yeah, he could possibly do that. He could try and he's talked about, called it bifurcation. That's a big term. Of essentially splitting the media rights and offering them up to TV partners, both in football and basketball, thereby creating new revenue streams with your two major sports in this conference. Well, the things that help that obviously are to have more power brands in football, and that's Florida State, that's Clemson, that's Miami, Louisville to a level, but in basketball, then you're looking at, okay, is Louisville basketball going to get back to the level it could be? And can that offer more to our basketball prowess? Could Miami, who's had a fairly good runner in Jim Larrañaga, keep it up? Can Florida State also keep it up? Clemson's had its moments in basketball, but it's more of a football school. But it's about overall getting power brands into this conference. So Brett Yormark, hey, you got my support. I think it'd be an absolutely insane thing to watch him work his magic, but he's worked his magic once before and pulled it off when everybody thought that he couldn't do it. What did he do? He went and expanded the Big 12 to 16 teams. He added the 4 corner schools, as we were terming them, in Utah, Arizona State, and Colorado. And he only established that league more fully than it had been previously. There's so many people for so long who thought the Big 12 was going to be the most likely to go the way of the earth, speaking of a power conference. Well, could Brett Yormark have killed off one, and could he quite literally put a stake in the heart of the other, and thereby essentially making it a big 3? And all the while, because essentially, if you take these 4 power brands from the Big 12 conference, and by the way, I will welcome your feedback. What 4 teams would you like to see added? You only want to see 2 added? What do you want to see from this? If this were to come to fruition, what would you like to see? Drop us a note in the show notes below, whether you're watching this on YouTube or weighing via social media with us. Love nothing more than to hear your feedback. But if he can essentially pull the ACC's ironclad agreement apart, pick off the biggest brands in the conference, and essentially tell the SEC and the Big Ten, yeah, you guys can pick up the scraps over there and let the rest of the conference essentially reform itself in some form or fashion. It'd just be an incredible thing. And I think it would firmly entrench Brett Yormark as the guy who is unafraid of pulling off the impossible. And the way he pulls it off, I will never be able to really quantify what ultimately he's doing / saying to make it happen. But he seems to have a really, really firm hand on what's going on in college athletics. And when he wants something to happen, by golly, he's going to make it happen if at all possible. So we'll see. I'm very intrigued by this. Like I said, the reporting seemed shaky at first, but when Ross Dellinger sits down in a media interview and says the Big 12's eyeing the ACC, and it doesn't take very long to think, okay, he's talking to Florida State, he's talking to Clemson, and he may be talking to 3 or 4 other teams in that conference saying, okay, guys, if we can get you out of this, hey, you know where your home is going to be, right? That would be really, really impressive to see see Brett Yormark, that's where the mark came from, to see Yormark pull this off. And if he does pull it off, what can't he accomplish at that point? Really, what in the world could you say, Brett, go do that? I don't think you can pull that off. What would hold him back from pulling anything else off? We'll see. I'm very, very intrigued, and I'll be tracking this very closely. And I know our friends over in the Locked On Big 12 podcast, of course, Drake Toll, doing a fantastic job tracking all that. If you guys are looking for a podcast to check out after this, make it your second listen today. Check out Locked On Big 12 if you don't already. Drake does an incredible job, and he breaks this down far more in depth than I ever will. And if you want more information like that, once again, Locked On Big 12 is your next best friend out there. All right, we will wrap up today's edition of the show by getting to your questions. You guys send them in via our Locked On Cougars Insider Group. We'll answer as many as we can in the time remaining. We'll get to that coming up momentarily right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Of course, I love sports. I think a number of you who are listening and or watching this are just like me. But as the summer rolls on, it can get a little dry and it doesn't seem to have as much action as it would have during the fall or the winter months. The good news is FanDuel is helping you have fun all summer long because they're offering all customers a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody every day all summer long. You want to put some money down on BYU being 55-1 odds to win the national championship in men's basketball with the new signing today? Get on FanDuel.com and do that today. You think BYU football can go over 4.5 wins? That's the over-under win total from our friends at FanDuel for football this fall. FanDuel.com and get started today. The best part is FanDuel has got all of the options available to you guys in a really simple and easy-to-use app. So FanDuel.com is where you guys need to start and have some fun and make the most out of your summer today. Once again, that's FanDuel.com, and it's all courtesy of your friends over at FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not done so already, sign up for our Locked On Cougars Insider Group. That is where our questions for today's mailbag are coming from. That's it's one of the perks. If you want to be a part of the podcast, you want your questions asked on the show, you got to sign up for our Locked On Cougars Insider Group. It's a 14-day free trial. You can sign up. It's $5 a month afterwards. Hope you guys will all consider signing up. We've got a really good crew right now with us. Nothing more than to have more Cougar fans join us, and we'll pass along information there. The best part is it comes to your phone in the form of a text message. It doesn't get much more simple than that. All right, a couple of questions here. Let's start off with Brandon Holt. A great one here because it goes back to yesterday's. I talked about LJ Martin. He said, if you were to make a prediction regarding injuries on week 1, which prominent players, i.e. LJ Martin and Ben Bywater, would you predict will be available week 1 from what you've heard, and maybe others you think will be ready that have been injured? Okay, we'll see. Will not be available, week 1, and others that you would think would be available that have been injured. Now, with regards to LJ Martin, I said it yesterday. What I am hearing is he's likely to miss some time early on in the season. I'm not expecting it to be season ending, but ultimately he has to get himself 100%. If that takes some time to start the season, you deal with it. Ben Bywater, Kalani Sitake, reading between the lines and some of his comments he made to KSL Sports in particular, make it sound like that he's a little wary of Ben Bywater's availability coming back. Now, Ben has been a regular on my radio show on the KSL Sports Zone for the past 2 seasons. I have not talked with him much this summer. We don't usually talk a lot until we get closer to the season. We'll see if he comes back. Now, I would love nothing more than see Ben out there because he truly is the heart and soul of that BYU defense, and we all saw it when he got injured against Kansas. The rest of the season, that defense was not the same. So you hope at some point Ben can get back on the field and enjoy a healthy season, but number one thing is getting healthy. That is priority 1, 2, 3, and 4 for him at this point. A player you think might be ready that has been out injured. Siale Esera, I'm hearing good things about this. Now, Siale suffered a pretty significant foot injury right at the tail end of last year. I was out on the practice field last fall. It was late in the season. It might have been like week 10 or 11. And I see him limping off the field, being aided by trainers with his foot, with his shoe off, his like socks off. I'm like, oh, that's not good. That's an ankle. That's a foot. And then the news started emerging. It was a foot injury for him. But I am hearing that he has made good progression. And so long as he is medically cleared by BYU's team doctor, he could be available by the start of the season, which there was some question if he would be available come the start of the year. So hopefully that answers your question, Brandon. I have not heard much in terms of injury news beyond those guys, but obviously we'll have more for you as things come along here. Let's see. A great question here, or a great comment from Donovan here says, I think Bohannon will be the starter because he is a senior and Retzloff will be the backup. What do you think? Donovan, I think it's opposite. Right now, I think Jake Retzloff is the incumbent. I think he is the favorite going into the season. And I think that barring something crazy from Gary Bohannon, who shows out in fall camp very early on and makes it the job his, I think my money still rides with Jake Retzloff. Now, I've been wrong before. I'd be happy to eat crow on that if I am wrong, but I think it will be Jake Retzloff's job to lose going into training camp, and Gary Bohannon will be the gentleman that'll have to play catch-up essentially and surpass him. There's another great question here that kind of relates to that, if I can find this question. I kind of put them out of order here, so it's one of those fun. Oh, here we go. Danny says this. Kalani Sitake spoke with pride that there are 4 quarterbacks on the team with NCAA game experience. Does that make a difference if our running back or blocking doesn't get statistically significantly better? Really, it doesn't, because BYU, I don't care who you put at quarterback last year, points behind that offensive line, they were going to get killed. It was not good enough. with a better offensive line in front of them, which I fully expect. And like I said, we're going to have Connor Pay here hopefully early next week to recap media days and get his thoughts on how the summer is progressing. With a better offensive line performance, obviously better running backs, obviously on the field if LJ Martin is available or the other guys, that will help out whoever the quarterback is. The game experience for all four of them, yeah, it's actually a really, really nice thing to have. But I think it's a two-man race. It's Jake Retzloff. It's Gary Bohannon. I think Trayson Bourget is your number 3 guy. And then fourth is McKay Hillstead. But it feels like it's a two-man race for that starting quarterback job. And the hope is that one of those guys establishes himself as the guy early on in training camp and essentially says, it's mine. I'm not relinquishing this. And we're moving on with that. Marvin Nelson, can you comment? If you can comment on it, is there any further information on LJ Martin's injury status? What I've reported is what I've got. So if I had more, I'd be happy to pass it along, but that's what I've got on him is that he is hopeful that he will be available come game 1, but other people around the program are more pessimistic. He may miss some time early on in the season, but even if he misses the non-conference slate and he comes available week 4 when BYU takes on Kansas State to kick off Big 12 play, I'd rather have him healthy for 9 Big 12 games than 3 non-conference games, if that makes sense. That's just my personal opinion on that matter. Now, Bryce asked a great question on that as well. Regardless of how long LJ Martin is out, how confident are you in the other running backs in his absence, assuming we get at least adequate play from our offensive line? I think the offensive line is going to surprise some folks. I think Connor Pay and the rest of that offensive line, they're sick of hearing how cruddy they were last year. So if they get better offensive line play, that's going to make the running backs look all the better. But I do have confidence, at least for however long LJ Martin might be out, the guys like Miles Davis, Pokai Haunga, as well as Hinckley Ropati, those 3 are going to be called upon to kind of shoulder the load for BYU running back with LJ Martin now. Now, Enoch Nawahine also could factor into that, but I think that the 3 I mentioned, Miles Davis, Hinckley Ropati, and Pokai Haunga, that trio, it may be by committee, but between the 3 of them, I think there's enough skill and enough talent to more than adequately make up for what a guy like LJ Martin brings to the table when he's healthy. Obviously, you want to have LJ on the field as soon as humanly possible, and they will obviously do their best. He will do his best to be cleared. I would love nothing more than to have my reporting be shot to pieces, and the fact that he shows up week 1, I'd love nothing more than that, but it's got to have better offensive line play, but I do think the running backs, as a sum total of their parts, will be able to handle that load. I really do believe that. Let's see what else we got here from other questions. Ty asked this. Just would love to know if BYU are attempting to get any USU players, especially now that injuries are surfacing in a few areas. Well, the thing about it is the portal window for USU players is not officially open until next Tuesday. That is when the firing by Utah State University will officially become official for Blake Anderson. At that point, when the paperwork is filed, whatever needs to happen, the portal window will open for 30 days at that point. BYU and a bevy of other programs will take a look at guys, I'm sure, at Utah State. Most notably, I'm sure Ike Larson and Jalen Royals will be the 2 chief prizes off that roster. There's other pieces there that a program could utilize. The question is, do you have scholarships available right now? And would they be able to get enrolled in your school for summer term right now? Because if they don't enroll until fall term begins, they can't participate in training camp, as far as I am aware. Now, there could be different rules on the NCAA side of things that's changed, but my understanding is that if you are not enrolled for summer term, you cannot participate in training camp. Thereby, you will not be able to show up until the first week of classes, which I think for BYU is the first week of September, which is game week 2. Yeah, so not ideal. So we'll see what happens. I am interested to see where things ultimately go on that front. Let's see. Bryant asked this. What position group do you expect to make the biggest improvement this year on the football team? I think I already alluded to it. The offensive line. They're saying everything right. They've got a lot of talent returning on that offensive front. And I think that with the new coaching under TJ Woods, I think that offensive line is going to make a marked improvement. The other position group that I am hoping they'll make a big improvement this year is the quarterback play. I want somebody to step up, whether it's Jake Retzloff, whether it's Gary Bohannon, if you have to move further down the roster to Bourget or Hillstead. I want one of those guys to make that job his and never relinquish control of it once they're given that opportunity. Does that mean Jake Retzloff week 1 against Southern Illinois lights it up and then he makes the job his for the next 12 games? That'd be great. But if he falters at all, I'd love for Gary Bohannon to step in and say, you know what, this is my job, and then make it his. whoever ends up being the quote unquote guy for BYU at quarterback, they got to make the position theirs, and they've got to show that they've got the gumption, the grit, the tenacity. They got the it factor to be the guy for BYU at quarterback. If they can get that type of improvement for offensive line and quarterback play, I think this program could go a lot further than many might expect. I really do think that would be a big part of this. All right, a couple other things. What are we looking at here with regards to, Mark has a great point here. It says, have you heard anything about BYU paying the $22 million annual profit sharing like some Big 12 schools are saying they will pay? Tom Homo told my compatriot at KSL Sports, Mitch Harper, during the spring meetings for the Big 12 that the conference was going to talk about it during those spring meetings and come to an agreement on what they were going to do. I fully expect that BYU and the rest of the Big 12 will pay up to $22 million. They will pay whatever that number ends up being, and it's allotted by the NCAA. Where that money will come from for some of these schools, that remains to be determined, and I'm sure BYU will be looking around to fill out their coffers on that front to make sure they can pay that. But I fully expect that Tom Homo and the BYU athletic department will pay out the full $20 to $22 million allotment, the revenue sharing fee. I really do expect them to pay the full allotment out there. So, yeah, stay tuned. But that's that. And by the way, that comes into effect next year. I think next summer, like this time next year, that money will start being paid out to BYU players. It's incredible to think how quickly that might be coming. So I am interested to see what happens on that. The other thing about this is I want to say thank you. A number of these messages from a Locked On Cougars insider group, along with a number of you who weighed in via social media. I got DMs, texts, emails about it. My comments about my grandfather. I really do appreciate it. Now, I've said it before, I'll say it again. He's one of my heroes, and I hope nothing but the best for him, obviously, as he deals with his health. He's 90 years old. So you know what? Things happen, but I really, really do appreciate the messages of support. I had a chance to go over. I recorded last night's podcast way late because I spent 2 or 3 hours at least sitting at his bedside, just talking with him. And we had a great time talking sports, talking parenthood, because I've got 3 young kids, and obviously he's full of wisdom, having raised kids of his own. He's got obviously me as his grandkid. He's got great grandchildren. But I really do appreciate all of the messages from you guys. I was able to share some of them with him, and I think it really buoyed his spirits up to a degree. So truthfully, Chris, there's a number of you guys in here, Mark, who made comments about it, Tyson about it. So you know what? And I think there's 4 or 5 others on this Locked On Cougars insider group who made similar comments. I really do appreciate that. I cannot express enough what it meant to me to have that. Now, John has a really, really good question here. I literally just saw this as a wrapping up, but we are over time. So I'm going to hold on to this one. And John, I promise we'll get back to this. But essentially, he thinks that BYU and Utah will end up with the exact same record this coming season. It's not a very good record if you're a Utah fan, but it's a pretty good record if you're a Cougar fan. And we'll probably hold on to that one till Monday or some point next week. So I need to think about this, John. I think you had a very, very good question here, and we'll use that as a topic to kind of launch off next week's edition of the podcast. So there you go. That's what I got for you guys on this Friday. Big thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Thank you to all of you who we like to call everydayers. And once again, make sure you guys check out Locked On Big 12. It's a really, really fun way to stay up to date on the entire conference when it comes to the Big 12 conference realignment, what Brett Yormark's trying to do out there, power polls and the like. Drake Toll's got you guys going. So check it out. It's Locked On Big 12. Make that your second listen today. And of course, we'll be back again with you guys soon, probably on Monday, right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.